All right, what's up, boys? Welcome to the first part of my 11-part first reactions Star Wars series. So I just got done watching Star Wars: The Phantom Menace, so episode 1, and this is pretty much going to be my video series documenting my first thoughts and kind of how I reacted to the movie and that kind of thing. So with The Phantom Menace, I have a lot of thoughts. First off, it's actually not that bad of a film in and of itself. So I think its biggest weaknesses are reliance on specifically like CGI for characters. So there's a lot of CGI in the film, and that's a whole part of the prequel trilogy, is that they rely heavily on CGI and special effects. In this film specifically, like the CGI for ships and that kind of thing is actually not that bad. So it looks pretty good still to this day, but the CGI for characters like Jar Jar Binks and that kind of thing, that it looks kind of poo-poo. So not so good. Another weakness is the reliance on Jar Jar Binks' character. So his role in the film, I believe, is like at the beginning it's just Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, and both characters are supposed to be like reserved, serious characters. So it's kind of boring. Like at the beginning, when it's just the two of them not doing anything, it would be really boring to see those interactions. But so Jar Jar is supposed to be that entertainment value, but my issue with that is that he's not entertaining. He's actually really cringy. So it's like, it's kind of a double whammy because he's not funny and he's really overemphasized in those beginning sequences, and then he's also really bad CGI. So I think that was what that hatred towards him kind of came from. Another big weakness, I think, is like the role in of itself that this film plays in the entire series. So this film is supposed to create a trilogy that is going to be a prequel trilogy, obviously, but this one specifically plays the exposition of like what's happening in the universe at that point. So it sets up the next two films, but that makes it so that pretty much it's very like boring at parts, but also, I guess not boring, but it's heavy exposition. There's a lot of explaining going on. So when there's explaining going on, there's obviously not a lot of action going on and that kind of thing. So I feel like that makes the film not that great, but also along with that, it's very self-contained. So I can imagine like the film, when it ends, there's not an obvious path that it's going to take. So it's like all you know is that Anakin's going to be trained as a Jedi and that there's going to be another Sith. And the one Sith that we did have died, so it's like, and then Qui-Gon dies, so it's like he's a heavy character in the whole film, and he dies. So those two, the Sith and the Jedi that we heavily are committed to, die, both in the first film. So it's like, where is the trilogy going to go? So I can see how people would leave this film not happy because of that reason. But other than that, like those big things, the film is pretty good. The pod racing scene is is a really good scene, and that whole sequence on Tatooine is really good. And then the climax is really good, specifically the Jedi fight scene, and then what Padme does with like when they sneak into the Naboo like palace area, when they sneak in and they do stealthy and they're shooting them up, bang bang, and it's a lot of gunfighting mixed with the the lightsaber battling. And then also at the same time, they have ships battling at the blockade kind of comm ships. So they have that going, all three of those things going on at the same time. And the droids fight with the Gungans. That's like kind of iffy because the CGI is so bad for the Gungans. It's like the entire like sequence is made worse because of the CGI. And that's what a big thing I think is, like the Ewoks, it's the same thing with the Ewoks, but they didn't use CGI, and it's way better, like way better, because they didn't rely so heavily on bad CGI. So I think that's one of the biggest hindrances of the film is the poor CGI. And then also, I had one more point that I wanted to bring up. The Duel of Fate song is iconic. Obviously, that brings up the value of this film. I actually really like it. It's not one of my favorites, obviously, but it's definitely not a terrible film. I believe tomorrow I'll probably be watching Attack of the Clones, so I'll fill you in tomorrow. And then starting next week, I'll be kind of creating a tier list. So starting, I'll be like, what's better, Phantom Menace or Attack of Clones? And then I'll kind of build off from there, and then I'll make a list, obviously. So I believe Attack of the Clones is going to be below, but we'll see after that. So hopefully I didn't forget anything of the things that I wanted to talk about. Yeah, pretty much TLDR. The film's pretty good. CGI, mostly like CGI of characters is pretty bad. Oh, another thing I wanted to bring up. Watto is a really cool character, and I think is like central to this film. And I don't know, I really like that character. His design, just the elements surrounding him is really cool. And that whole pod racing. Yeah, I really like the Tatooine part of the movie. And then the final part. Those two parts are really good. So all around, it's a quality film, but I think people gave it a lot of hate because it was kind of disappointing, and it kind of strays from what Star Wars was before in the original trilogy, which was it had CGI, but it was heavily reliant on practical effects and then knew the limits of CGI. But this one, they were like, what if we just do more CGI because technology is better? But then the CGI wasn't as good as the practical effects. Might have been cheaper, but it wasn't as good. So that's the issue. Thank you for watching my video. Have a good night.